'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a raider was snoring, not even a mouse. As Raszageth's death drew near, Tettles and Dratnos were here to bring you the daily recap. Oh my, oh dear.
Yeah, the second to last ever daily recap, kind of regardless of what happens with the flight schedule.
Wait, are you going home?
Probably, yeah. It seems, it seems pretty likely, yeah.
Okay. So, basically, with today's daily recap, Echo had a really good day. Let's bring up the time machine so we can see what's happened in the last 24 hours. And bang! As we see on screen here, Echo has now had a 19.6% wipe on Raszageth. I mean, it's looked really good.
Yeah, it's looked phenomenal day of progression for Echo, most of which I was asleep for, but caught the start of it as they started making their way through that P2 shield, and that wipe that we saw at 19.6%, that's the only time they've made it into that third phase, right? But
yes.
Still, that is it was a clean P2, right?
So most of today's prog was progging through P2 and P3.
Yeah.
The P2 and the P2
second
intermission. Yeah. The P2 second intermission seems like it's going to cause a lot of problems. Liquid seems like they've been progging most of that as well. I think that Liquid is going to probably end up at a same point, if not better than Echo by the time that Echo wake up. Liquid, you know, they need to get through the P2 intermission, which doesn't seem easy, but it's one of those situations, and we're going to see it in video in a second, that once you get through that intermission, you're able to get the boss down to 20% fairly reliably.
Yeah, because then P3 starts, and P3, you know, there's a tight damage check. The damage check is kind of consistent. It starts at the start of P2, right?
Yes.
Like that whole damage check starts there. It's sort of like Sylvanas, where P1 damage doesn't really matter because it's percent health based when you push into the out of P1, but then it is extremely relevant once you start P2. All of your damage matters, and that's what we're going to start seeing the guild optimize for to try and kill this boss prior to it killing them. So here's what the mythic intermission looks like. Not one, not two, but three ads.
Yeah, so basically the ads, one of them is electrocharged, and it doesn't melee, whereas the other two are just like normal ads and they melee. They all do ball lightning, and then at some point they teleport and they spawn the Stormlings. The Stormling part is the point of the fight in which Echo and Liquid have been having the most issues. It's in Echo, in the one time that they made it through, basically what they did is they killed the first wave of Stormlings. They drop a binding shot, they mass grip, they try to keep them together as long as possible. Their Moonkins and their Warrior and their Demon Hunter do like a large majority of the damage here. And then, at this point, the second set of Stormlings should be spawning around this part, where so you hate this, because if they contact the ads at all, then they heal them, and if they're up for too long, then the ads enrage itself. But the second wave of Stormlings, whenever they spawn, they leave those mass rooted in the middle of the room.
Okay, yeah, so you just leave them there, ignore them, and tunnel these ads, get them killed before the mass root expires, and even if the mass root expires, right, you could juggle those ads for a while longer in panic mode from reaching their targets.
So I think that one of the big things is then after this, you go into the last phase on the boss. And the last phase of the boss is largely the same on Heroic as it was on Mythic, which kind of surprised Alex and myself whenever we were casting. It was just one of those situations where we kind of expected different overlaps, but they were more or less the same. The only thing that was different was that you need to soak these balls before they contact the boss, otherwise they will heal it.
So here comes that push in this best pull from Echo towards the final phase of the encounter. Yeah, unless there's a mythic only phase, in which case, you know, New Year's tier. But they're back on the very first platform now, and the storm starts to close in from the edges of the room. But yeah, can you explain the mythic mechanic in this phase?
Yeah, so hold on. If you can look for a second, there's going to be these orbs that start spawning towards the edges of the room, and then they're going to come close to the boss, and you literally just soak them. That's literally it. It's kind of similar to the Raging Tempest and Knock It Offensive or something like that.
Okay, there one comes. Yeah, you can see it over to the left-hand side. Someone needed to go out and soak that, and then bang, if that reaches the boss, it is over. It heals it for like 5% of its health. So you just have to play a little bit of Gatekeeper from the boss. That grip in is a heroic mechanic.
Yeah.
These fulminating charges are a P2 mechanic. And, you know, you just keep doing that and kill the boss before it kills you. And there's a lot of health required on the boss for that.
So it looks like the overlaps are very similar to Heroic, but the health is very, very high. I think on that pull in particular, if they had all 20 players alive for all of it, they would have probably have gotten the boss to somewhere in the order of like 12 to 8%. So it seems like it's killable this reset with this gear, but Echo and Liquid are going to have to optimize a lot more damage on the boss and potentially run a different composition. We don't exactly know, but it seems like if they can get any cooldowns off of the P1 or P2 intermission, instead put that into the boss, or somehow get it off the Storm Shield, those two things would be massive for their boss damage.
Is this a P3 Lust as well as a P1 Lust encounter?
Yes, this is a double Lust encounter.
Yeah, so a classic there. Now, it's possible that you don't need that P1 Lust anymore, and you can instead do a more efficient Lust somewhere at like 5 minutes with second pots or something in P2. That might be an option as well. But yeah, like you said, Storm Shield damage is kind of fake, right? Like, the Storm Shield mechanic is actually not that hard to break through, so taking some damage off of that, putting it into the boss when it's actually unshielded, could be a little bit more valuable towards making this enrage timer check.
Your best case scenario would actually only to use the Thaddeus marks to break the shield. Like, that would be your best case
right,
scenario.
Because as soon as you break the shield, you lose the Thaddeus marks, right? So you take a couple extra ticks by doing that, but it might be a little bit of extra value. I don't know. I'm not sure. I see the damage check is tight, but I think it looks doable. Yeah, I think it does look doable in the next couple of days here.
Okay, so I guess that to our next topic, is this raid going to be over by Christmas? And I think that today...
I think yes.
It looked like a really good day for it to be over by Christmas. I think that...
I think that this race will be decided in the next 24 to 48 hours. Yeah, I think if either guild plays out of their mind in the next 24 to 48 hours, I think they'll be able to take the boss down. If both guilds do, we're gonna have a real exciting finish here, and if neither guild does, then okay, we're gonna be here over Christmas.
I think there's a chance that Echo wakes up and Liquid's already better boss percentage than him.
I think that's likely. You know, this phenomenon of going to sleep ahead, waking up behind. As long as you're not waking up behind because of a nerf, which would be really unfortunate at this stage of the race now, I think that is a very exciting part of the race, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the last thing we want to talk about is kind of tuning across the raid. Tuning's been all over the place.
Yeah.
Raszageth has needed... we didn't even know this at time of recording yesterday, but like right after we recorded our video yesterday, Raszageth received another 50% nerf on the shield.
Yeah, so... We saw the first intermission requiring a 50% health nerf to the ads, in addition to a nerf on the flame ad from 70% of its max health to 55% on the shield that it does to itself.
What a crazy nerf.
So they nerfed the total shield on that thing by almost 2/3,
yes,
when you think about it, and it still wipes them sometimes.
Yes.
But they nerfed the full phase 1 intermission by half,
and
it's still not a free phase.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they nerfed the P2 Storm Shield by half again, and they nerfed the boss's health by 5% overall. Like, this suite of nerfs, okay, the 5% boss HP nerf, that's a reasonable size nerf
standard.
in isolation.
Honestly,
that's normal.
That's kind of standard.
Yeah, but you see these full-on mechanics that were twice as hard as they get nerfed to. Now, there's some speculation about why maybe they're doing this, right? Maybe they're over-nerfing because they're going to be out of office starting today or whatever, tomorrow or something, and this, they need to get it nerfed to a killable point, so they have to do a overshoot, but that begs the question... How did they need to get this big nerfs on these many mechanics? Like, multiple mechanics on this encounter have needed to be nerfed in half or more.
You know what? You know what needs half or more nerfs? Whenever Blizzard rebalances Legion dungeons to modern days, and they were
right,
and you see that, and you're like, that's deserved.
Now, there's some speculation that it's because these mechanics were buffed over the last few weeks on the datamine files, which is true. But there were several other mechanics in the raid that also were buffed over the last couple of weeks, and were fine.
HP, Senarth HP,
yeah,
like all of these bosses were
those came out
as
fine.
Well.
But somehow Raszageth's tuning was just absolutely unkillable on those two phases. Like, phase 2 and phase 1 intermission were not remotely possible with the tuning they launched at, and I just don't know how that happened. Yeah.
I think it'll be so interesting if we're ever able to hear from Blizzard what happened specifically with it, not in like a flame the devs way, but
right, just I'd love to see the postmortem on it as well, because it's just so interesting, because
they've never messed up tuning like this either.
I mean, there have been things that have been like over-tuned, but usually it's a case of like, oh, okay, there's a 15% nerf and then the guilds kill it, right?
Yes.
A 50% nerf to a mechanic is pretty unheard of for something like this.
A 15% nerf is outrageous, by the way.
That's a large nerf, but that's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, it's the race World First, these bosses, especially Raszageth untested, right? Like, okay, we see these sorts of things happening, but yeah, the fact that multiple entire phases were completely impossible before 50% nerfs to their mechanics landed is something that it does make me a little bit more suspicious of future untested bosses.
Raszageth's not even bugged or anything.
Yeah,
right?
it's not. But the untested bosses on the bug front is not something that Raszageth's done a pretty good job. There's a little bit of a bug sometimes in P1 where you don't get the last set of sparks spawning. I don't know if you've seen that, but
no,
that's happened on like 3 pulls so far. That last set of sparks just hasn't spawned. But
Good bug.
yeah, that's not a big deal. It doesn't really matter. It's not even a good bug to try and reproduce because it just makes you confused and have the circles around you and then die because you're not used to what's happening. But yeah, the fact that this has happened here is, I mean, it's not going to affect the race, right? It's because of the times that these two nerfs have landed. It's not going to affect the race. But if we're wrong about how killable the boss is with current HP values, and the boss needs another HP nerf before it can die, that is going to be really unfortunate because at this point, the timing of that nerf will be hugely impactful for which guild can kill the boss
If another
first.
nerf has to go through, that would be
Yeah.
so bad. Okay, so looking at the rest of the tuning across the raid, Broodkeeper, I would say was fine.
Yeah,
It's tuned
if
okay.
anything, there's undertuning on some of the other encounters, which I think was reasonable for this tier. I mean, they're like a lot of 50 or sub 50 pull bosses, no bosses over 70 pulls, but that's okay. There don't need to be bosses over 70 pulls. I think I like tiers that have one boss that's kind of a mid-tier wall or a penultimate boss that's kind of challenging, but I don't think it's mandatory for a tier to have anything like that.
Dathia required a 15% nerf and an additional
Didn't
ad.
necessarily require it, but yeah, it took that nerf and then got killed very quickly, right?
Yeah, it took that nerf and they got killed very quickly. And honestly, I think after that change, it's still a difficult fight. It will be a lot less difficult if you're progging it at 415 item level, though.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, like the fact that this tier gets nerfed so much by the extra item level of the next few weeks, I think is a feature, not a bug. I think that is a good thing, but... Like the Raszageth numbers were not remote. Like the 450 gear wasn't going to help you with some of the Raszageth stuff.
Kurog, Teros, Sinarth, all fine tuning. Like Aranog, also fine. Primal Count's a little bit undertuned, but like it is.
Aranog was also very. I mean, Aranog and Primal Council were both one shot by all Race to World First Guild. I guess Method 2-shot Primal Council or something like that. But like they were very easy bosses, right? But that's fine. That's normal for the first two bosses of the tier. Yeah,
they weren't able to be done before you were able to go into heroic or normal though.
Yeah, I suspect that if Echo had done that, they could have killed those bosses, right?
Well,
it's just no good guilds went into those bosses before doing their heroic and mythic or heroic and normal stuff.
It's weird. It's weird tuning. I hope that Raszageth doesn't need another nerf. That would be a fucking pain.
Yeah, I don't think it does. Like the P1 intermission and the P2 shields. The first time I saw those mechanics, my thought was like, oh, this is like 95+% going to need a large nerf. And that came true. You got to be careful when you're casting about like immediately calling for nerfs on mechanics because like that's not, especially if you're wrong, it's not a good look. But that
there were some of them that were just I just looked at you and we were just both like, wait, they just missed the check with 20 people.
Yeah, they were 67 million off of the shield check. Like okay. Ooh, very cool. We can definitely... That's a reasonable amount of damage to do, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's going to be getting a nerf, and it's like, all right, well, I guess we'll check back later.
Yeah, so anyways, we don't think Raszageth is in a position where it needs any more of those. I'm sure it will receive some nerfs over the next few weeks for future guilds, but I think it is killable for World First guilds at this point, but I hope that is true. If it's not true, then nerf timing is going to be pivotal to the race.
So awkward. Yeah. All right, so I think that's going to be it for us today. We'll have one tomorrow, and then you're gone?
Well, I mean, I might stick around. I'm not 100% sure, but if the boss is either dead or close to dead, then my flight's expensive to rebook, so I'm probably out of here on the first scheduled one.
Yeah, checks out. All right, so we'll figure out something for the remainder of them. We'll definitely have a recap. We'll have a recap for sure.
I will be back probably in time to record the following one, so we can do it remotely or something.
Yeah, okay, so we'll have something.
Yeah, second to last one on this couch, though. So.
Second to last one on this couch. Hopefully tomorrow is we conclude the winner.
Yeah.
For the sake of our recaps.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll see you gamers tomorrow. Goodbye.